One, two, three.
Welcome everybody to Sunday Assembly Nashville. Glad you all could join us today. For the next hour or so, we're going to hear some talk, sing some songs. But you don't have to sing, you don't have to dance, you don't have to clap, but it's a hell of a lot more fun if you do. So why don't you all stand up and join us, clap along, sing along, and work are going to be straight.
world, or when a chicken crosses the road, your motives are not questioned.
Well, awesome! All right, so here we go. We got another one for you. Listen to Franco. Is there something strange in your neighborhood? Who you gonna call? Is there something weird that don't look good? Who you gonna call? Invisible man sleeping in your bed. Who can you call? Yeah, Chris! Let me tell you something. Boston makes me feel good. I ain't breaking no rules. I ain't breaking no rules. Don't get caught alone, no. When it comes to your door, unless you just want some more, I think you better call. Yeah, who you gonna call? Who can you call? Yeah, I think you better call. Well, who you gonna call? I can't hear you. Who you gonna call? Louder, who can you call? Everybody, go ahead and have a seat. We're gonna welcome up to the stage our host for today. Please welcome Mr. I'll give you a little intro. James Jamaica, all right!
Good morning, everybody.
Morning. Hi, Jamie.
All right, can you hear?
Get right on that microphone.
Right up in it?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. My name is Jamie Sabika. I'll be the host today. Welcome to Sunday Assembly. The theme today is humility, which is very appropriate because this morning I was served a small slice of humble pie. Originally, my wife and I had a very cute skit planned, but now it's just me up here. Yes. Now, I had never realized that I depend on her that much until I'm stuck up here in this office. So, with that being said, let's get going. This is the Sunday Assembly Nashville, a secular congregation that celebrates life. Our motto, live better, help often, and wonder more. Our mission, a Sunday assembly in every town, city, and village that wants one. My task, not lose my place in the notes. Our vision, to help everybody live as fully as possible. We meet the second Sunday of every month here at Scarrett Bennett, and you can check out our Facebook and Meetup pages for gatherings hosted by members of the congregation, people, congregees. Y'all feel like congregees? Okay, congregees, hosted
Assemblers.
by congregees. There's also a secret Facebook page that you can join by messaging the main page if you don't feel like broadcasting your beliefs to the rest of Facebook. Do we have any new people in the crowd? Will the new people please stand up? If this is your first Sunday assembly, particularly, we would like to welcome our visitors from Atlanta. And also to the Honors Religion and Society class here from MTSU. They've been tasked to visit a religious meeting sometime this semester that they are not usually a part of. So going to church with Grandma doesn't count. Although if Grandma goes to church, you should go with her. After the assembly, we'll be having lunch at Blackstone, which is on 20th and West End. Please join us. It's always a lot of fun. And as I said, our theme today is intellectual humility. For a few readings, we have Mr. Matthew Bond, who will read Tell the Truth, But Tell It Slant by Emily Dickinson. Paradoxes and Oxymorons by John Ashbery. And am I missing any?
Splitting in Order.
And Splitting in Order
By Ted Kooser.
by Ted Kooser. But who better to tell you than Matthew Bond? Please welcome.
It is a mic in front of me. All right. We begin with the Emily Dickinson poem. Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies. Too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise as lightning to the children eased with explanation kind. The truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind. This next poem, it's one of my favorites. I've loved it for years, but it's slightly difficult. I love it, and I'm not always sure what Ashbery's getting at in every line. So we're going to try something a little different. We're going to project the poem so you can sort of read along, and maybe it'll make more sense, and at least it probably won't make any less sense. Paradoxes and Oxymorons. This poem is concerned with language on a very plain level. Look at it talking to you. You look out a window or pretend to fidget. You have it, but you don't have it. You miss it, it misses you. You miss each other. The poem is sad because it wants to be yours and cannot. What's a plain level? It is that, and other things, bringing a system of them into play. Play? Well, actually, yes. But I consider play to be a deeper, outside thing. A dreamed role pattern, as in the division of grace these long August days. Without proof. Open-ended. And before you know, It gets lost in the steam and chatter of typewriters. It has been played once more. I think you exist only to tease me into doing it on your level, and then you aren't there, or have adopted a different attitude, and the poem has set me softly down beside you. The poem is you. To point out how long I've loved this poem, I picked it up in this book. This is where I first found it, and so we go from the 1860s to the 1980s into just last year, 2014. Splitting in Order by Ted Kooser. I like to watch an old man cutting a sandwich in half. Maybe an ordinary cold roast beef on whole wheat bread, no pickles or onion, keeping his shaky hands steady by placing his forearms firm on the edge of the table and using both hands, the left to hold the sandwich in place and the right to cut it surely, corner to corner, observing his progress through glasses that moments before he wiped with his napkin, and then to see him lift half onto the extra plate that he asked the server to bring, and then to wait, offering the plate to his wife, while she slowly unrolls her napkin and places her spoon, her knife, and fork in their proper places, then smooths the starched white napkin over her knees and meets his eyes and holds out both old hands to him.
Thank you very much, Matthew. I'm always impressed by people who can read well because I'm not one of them, and I thought you did a very good job. So now, for a little more fun, the Unnamed Assembly Band for another song.
Yeah, sure.
Welcome then.
See you, baby. I'm here for you. I'm getting across the room. Gonzo's girlfriend.
You can be amazing, you can turn a phrase into a weapon holder. You can be the outcast, to be the backlash of somebody's lack of love. Or you can start speaking. Nothing's gonna hurt you the way the words do when they settle beneath your skin. Kept on the inside, no sunlight, sometimes the shadows. But I wonder what would happen if you say what you wanna say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave with what you wanna say. Just let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave. Yeah. I just wanna see you. Just wanna see you. I just wanna just wanna see you. I just wanna see you. Just wanna see you.
Thank you very much, unnamed assembly band. So, my wife Carrie, who is our co-host, I should say joint host, is here, and I was just telling them, sweetie, about how much I depend on you this morning.
For talking?
For talking, yes.
He really does.
Yes. I can make words, but not entirely.
Sentence constructions.
Microphone.
I'm working on it.
She needs her mic.
Microphone. Get on that microphone. Which ones are high? The one right beside her.
You need help making sentences too.
All right. We are fortunate to have with us today Bob Pondillo and Cass Midgley. They are our guest speakers, and they host the podcast Everyone's Agnostic.
Cass Midgley earned his master's in theological studies from Vanderbilt in 2013 as an atheist. He was raised in Oklahoma as a Christian, and at age 38 he left the church. He decided that his dark night of the soul was a glimpse into reality, not confusion from the devil. Today he finds atheism to be the best practice of theism.
And Dr. Pondillo earned his PhD in Media and Culture at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He is a tenured, now retired Professor Emeritus at Middle Tennessee State University, where he taught screenwriting, media history, and media and culture classes for 15 years. He has garnered not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 Emmy Awards for broadcast writing and producing. Emmys for broadcast writing and producing, and in 2002 was introduced into the Ohio Radio Television Broadcasters Hall of Fame in Akron. That is a mouthful. He also writes and directs short films, including The Miracles on Honeybee Hill, which earned dozens of film festival awards, rave reviews, and stirred up a beehive of controversy.
Together, Cass and Bob decided to start a podcast that would encourage people who are on the pilgrimage of deconstructing their childhood faith.
Please join me in welcoming the hosts of the Everyone's Agnostic podcast, Bob Pondillo and Cass Midgley.
Hello, New York. Hello, LA. Check. Are we feeding the bird? Little bird feed. Okay.
I don't know.
Say it with me. I don't know.
Good God, it is liberating. I'm a towering mountain of ignorance. I don't know.
We're taught to believe that everything has a reason.
And so we observe the world, we see what happened.
And then we define the thing that happened as the reason the thing happened.
But I think a lot of time we could end up mixing up thinking something with knowing something.
That's why it can be so impossible to talk about certain topics with certain people.
They've tied those suppositions to themselves so tightly with knots of narrative and constructed reality and values. There's certainly just no untying it.
And maybe unsurprisingly in those situations, the best course of action is just to be friends.
Maybe even ask them about that thing they've created.
Yeah, because to them it's immensely valuable.
The world as we perceive it, as we've built it inside ourselves, is a lie that we tell ourselves, not out of deception, but out of necessity.
We have no other choice.
We simply cannot understand the world as it is, and so we construct.
But sometimes I just have to tell myself the thing that's definitely true.
The truest thing I can say.
Which is, I don't know.
We got ahead of the tape.
This is the Everyone's Agnostic podcast with Bob Pondillo and Cass Midgley.
There we go.
All right. Yeah.
So I'm Cass.
I'm Bob. Hey.
And we are out of Murfreesboro. We just got a little podcast out there, and we're going to be talking about podcasting in general. But our show was a parade of people who are on a deconstruction journey. of the people that we had on, we have had atheists, we've had Christians that are still Christians, or Christians that have just evolved. We've had a Muslim, we had a Jewish rabbi, and we're going to talk about those guests today. I'd like to do this in 21 minutes, and this is my goal as far as an overview of the episodes, observations from the experiment, and questions at the end. This is a picture of our little studio in the... we don't normally sit that close to each other, but for the sake of the picture, we did. There's a wall of fame of quotes behind me, and so we started out the show with this subtitle. We interview people you don't know on a subject no one wants to talk about. What's not to like? It's true. And many of the guests we don't know. I mean, not only do you not know them, some of them that are strangers. We did a guy yesterday that was a complete stranger to both of us.
Great
Sometimes
show.
we have mutual friends. What?
It was a great show, too.
It was a great show, of course. And they end up just being an amazing thing every time, at least for us. And the cool thing about DIY with podcasting is just anybody can start one. And there's no FCC regulations, and it's really free, and it's really cool.
That's right.
So, starting with episode 1 and 2, Bob and I interview each other, and it gets those introductions out of the way. And then
we begin. Episode 3, for example, that's Ben Hicks.
he's an ex-Church of Christ computer technician.
Episode 4, Mary Grieshopper.
He's a pseudo-Christian barista in Dallas.
Yeah. Episode 5, Julia Jordan.
Lesbian ex-Christian.
Number 6, Sam Rhimes.
A gay pseudo-Christian with HIV.
Yeah. Episode 7 was Blake Tumbleson.
Ex-Christian airplane salesman.
Right. Patty Moore is next.
A bisexual Christian music artist.
A non-stamp collector.
This is that YouTube vlogger that we didn't really interview, we just featured his stuff. We love him.
Right. Number 10 was Wayne Donahue.
This is a guy in Houston who's an ex-Christian. He actually was the co-founder of Star Song Records, a Christian record label.
Huh.
But he's now a Zen Buddhist Hindu guru pot smoker.
Yeah. Cass did a monologue on episode 11, and on 12 it was Slink.
This is an anonymous guy that wouldn't reveal his character and sometimes, or his name. Sometimes people's anonymity about their atheism is important to their job security and such. And so we just gave him a name that he was an old college friend of mine. We called him Slinky. But he's an interesting guy. He's a cool interview. He's very conservative, even though he's a lifelong atheist. Anyway, I want to be single dad.
Okay. Episode 13, well, first of all, yes, 13, Roger Woolsey.
This is a current Methodist minister on University of Colorado campus.
Yeah, on the 14th episode was me. I did a thing called Good Without God.
One of our most listened to shows. It's really good.
Go figure, huh? Episode 15, actor David Lawrence from LA.
Lifelong atheist.
Sam Bowman, number 16.
This is our oldest guest, and he was a sage of literature, and he's kind of new agey.
Yeah. Number 17, Kimberly Mathis.
Ex-Church of Christ, mother of 3 or 4.
18 was Halloween. And number 19 was Sherry Person and Kayla Brewster.
This is a friend of mine from Divinity School, and she brought her atheist friend.
On episode 20, we just talked about stuff. But 21, we had Frank Schaefer.
So I gave it, every now and then we do somebody that you might know. And this is author of Why I'm an Atheist That Believes in God and the son of famous theologian Francis Schaeffer.
Yeah. The next one, number 22, was Rabbi Rami Shapiro. Do you know Rabbi Rami?
He's
pretty
right
big
here
name.
in Nashville and Murfreesboro area.
Yeah,
Jewish interfaith guy.
Number 23 was Elise Ray Helford.
Atheist MTSU professor of Jewish and Holocaust studies.
24, Joe Colegero.
Just a regular Joe.
That's pretty
Christian
much.
guy.
Number 25, Michael Dowd. You might know him.
American progressive Christian minister, author, and eco-theologian, advocate of religious naturalism and evolution.
Right, by that time, we're at halftime, so we do a year in review. Then we move on to number 27.
And I believe he spoke here, right? Yeah. Godless in Dixie, really great guy, one of the few out atheists in Mississippi.
Yeah, another good one, Brandon Phibbs.
He's a science writer. He wrote for the TV series Cosmos, personal friends with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
That's right. Number 29, Pastor Tony Woodall.
This is a good old Southern boy in Murfreesboro who's to this day a Christian pastor, and he was brave enough to come on the show.
Yeah, and it was very strange, very tense, very tense. Episode 30, Wendy Hardy.
This is a friend and atheist in Murfreesboro, troubled by persecution that atheists receive in the workplace.
Number 31, Jeff Wilkerson.
Veteran, ex-Christian, good guy.
Here's a big one, Ryan Bell. I think they're doing a movie on him.
Year Without God, and now he does a podcast called Life After God.
Episode 33 and 34 was Jim Henderson.
This is a progressive Christian minister friend of mine, and it was a good show.
Yeah, and Fred Rich.
Fred Rich wrote Christian Nation, and a very scary novel, and could happen.
Yeah, it was scary. Number 35, Dr. Marlene Winnell.
She's a counselor for people that leave the faith. She wrote a book called Leaving the Fold. This is our #1 downloaded show, which is, just to let you know, is 2,000. So this is still a very, very small show as far as not that many listeners, but that's our biggest show, 2,000 downloads.
Right, then we did the best of the web's sampler, and then after that, yes?
Just some stuff that we found on the web that we thought worth sharing.
Pretty good. Episode 37, Kathy Escobar.
She's a Christian author of a book called Faith Shift, Finding Your Way Forward When Everything You Believe is Coming Apart.
38 was Hemet Mehta.
You guys, Hemet Mehta, right? The friendly atheist.
Right. Then we had, let me see, Benjamin Corey, number 39.
Progressive Christian blogger, formerly Fundy.
Right. Justin Schieber, number 40.
This is a counter-apologist, and he blogs on a thing called Real Atheology.
Yeah, number 41 was Jeff Little. You might know Jeff.
He's the host of Beer and Hymns here in Nashville, and he has a podcast called The Attentionist.
42 was Tracy Moody. You know Tracy?
I thought maybe she'd be here this morning. She's still in New York, but she's local atheist activist.
Number 43 was author Reba Riley.
She wrote a book called Post-Traumatic Church Syndrome.
Which was great. Really a great show. Number 44, Mandisa Thomas, who's back in the news. Yeah.
So, yeah, she's down in there in Atlanta. And this was a fascinating show for me, and she's the director of Black Nonbelievers.
Is Chris Stephen Heathen here? If he is, he was show number 45.
He was going to try to be here.
Yeah,
So
Chris
Nashville podcasters called Unbuckling the Bible Belt.
Ellie, a.k.a. Purple Fox, was 46.
Eli.
Is it Eli?
Yeah, so this is a guy who deconverted, and he put out 6 YouTubes that I highly recommend called Deconversion, and parts 1 through 6, and they're really good. It's very emotional.
Episode 47 was Cass's last Christian sermon.
This is just a tape of the last sermon I gave in church as a Christian. And we talked about it, of course.
It was kind of weird. Episode 48, Dan Errol.
Dan Topology, a blogger and author of a Christian book, a book about how to raise children as atheists.
Number 49 was American Atheist Convention.
So I went down there with a tape recorder and I just did a bunch of random interviews, and Dave Kong on the left was personal friends with Madeline Murray O'Hare, an atheist comedian Keith Lowell Jensen, and author poet Jennifer Michael Hecht.
Number 50 was Wendy Thomas Russell.
She's the author of Relax, It's Just God, How and Why to Talk to Your Kids About Religion When You're Not Religious.
51, Charlton.
Charleston, we dedicated a show to the North Carolina shooting.
Right, number 52 did a thing on Ernest Becker.
So there's a lecturer by the name of Sheldon Solomon who talks about this book, Ernest Becker's Deceased. This is a fascinating study as far as how much we do is determined by our denial and our fear of death.
Right. Number 53, Drew Beckius.
Drew Beckius is the Clergy Project guy, and he's just an ex-pastor like me.
I wonder if I'm there with him in the studio. Sorry.
Actually, I did that one by myself.
No wonder I couldn't remember that one. Number 54, Jennifer Crumpton.
She wrote a book called Femme Evangelical.
Okay, number 55 was Sarah Green and Adam House.
Adam's in the house.
Adam.
Yeah, and Adam came on our show. He's a war veteran, PTSD, proponent of cannabis.
Yeah, well, yeah. Number 56, Skeptic Muse.
This is a guy who went under a pseudonym because didn't want to affect his business and employment with his atheism, and he writes atheist songs, so we feature his music on this show.
Episode 57 was Lydia Allen.
She's one of the co-hosts of Dogma Debate, fantastic scientist.
58 was Bart Campolo.
We didn't interview Bart, but Hemet Mehta did, and I asked Hemet if I could use portions of that show, so we discussed it. Fantastic interview. Again, kind of about death and the atheist framing of death comfort.
Right. Episode 59 was Bobby C. and Mrs. Ashley.
These are the co-hosts of No Religion Required podcast.
Number 60, Callie Wright.
This is our first and only trans guest, and she's a co-host of the Gaytheist Manifesto. Fantastic.
61 was Wayne Rumsby. Nice.
Wayne lost a child at a young age, and he talks about that. This is a heart-wrenching story, but a beautiful story.
Next was Hina Databoy.
Hina Databoy was our ex-Muslim, and she was fantastic.
Daniel Duncan.
This is a guy we met at ReasonCon, and just a very interesting guy with his story of ex-Christianity.
Episode 64 was Jim Mulholland.
Wrote a book. He's an ex-pastor, ex-Quaker minister, great guy.
Number 65 was Becky Garrison.
Religious satirist and author, crazy show.
Yeah, and another crazy show, Baba Brinkman. Anybody familiar with Baba?
He's a rapper, he writes rap.
He's awesome.
He writes atheist rap and science rap and literature rap. He was brilliant.
Yeah, 67, Greta Vosper.
She's a minister of a Christian church in Canada, but she's an out atheist and wants to stay in the pulpit, and there's been kind of a witch hunt for her head.
68 was Rondell Williams.
Just a young black man. He has a podcast called Angry Black Rants.
Lex Polgar.
Lex Pelder is the show that just went up this morning, and that's where we stopped.
Okay. Oh, now coming up though, Krista Tippett will join us. We interviewed her just a couple of days ago, and Dan Barker from Wisconsin. So we've got some good shows in the future.
So that is a parade of stories that changed my life, and they're just going and making this PowerPoint. I wept because of how much community and bonding I feel with these people. So we started the show because the fact is that humans are always going to wrestle with the ontological questions. Why are we here? What's it mean to be human? What's the meaning of life? And when you answer that, and especially when you grow up as a child answering that with theism, and then you deconstruct that, it can really be scary. One quote that comes up in almost every episode. You want to read that, Mark?
Sure. It's Michael Shermer's quote, and it reads, humans are pattern-seeking, storytelling animals, and we are quite adept at telling stories about patterns, whether they exist or not. We always add one more thing. Pattern sharing, pattern-seeking, storytelling. Well, anyway, one more thing.
So we see stuff, right? We give meaning, unlike, what?
Meaning making.
Meaning making. Where there is no meaning, maybe, we come up with it. That's what we do as Homo sapiens. It's one of the blessings and the curses of the prefrontal cortex. So letting go of God can be lonely, scary, and painful, or all the above. Lonely because much of the work has to be done alone. Can't talk about it with friends sometimes, or even coworkers, or even spouses sometimes. So it could be a lonely work to deconstruct and to rebuild what now, how now shall I live. Secondly, it's scary because it can feel like the bottom's falling out. Just getting to the point, and I don't know if any of you experienced this, but getting to the point where I would let these words roll off my lips was a lot of work. I don't believe in God. I was 39 when I started deconstructing. By the time I was like 43, I'd let the word atheist roll off my lips, and that was like stepping off a cliff. So painful, lost relationships, in animosity and enmity between family sometimes and friends. It can feel like that you've lost a loved one. It's like Julia Sweeney, letting go of God was like a funeral, almost for burying God, or getting divorced from your lover.
And one of the things too we found, Cass, is that it's almost as if, well, as Cass said, someone has died. So there are the stages of grief that people go through: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and eventually acceptance. But it does take a long time, a lot longer than you might think. But the pattern is there, and we see it all the time, it seems like.
Week after week.
Yeah.
Emotions vary towards one's former religion, depending on depth of involvement. So like, if somebody was a real shallow, lightweight Christian their whole life, then letting go is kind of like, it can almost be blasé, banal. Those that were headlong into it, maybe lock, stock, and barrel, memorized scripture, your entire world was saturated in exclusively Christian relationships, exclusively listening to Christian music, all of these things, and then so that is going to be a different experience for deconstructing that level of faith. Pain incurred from people within the church can influence how mad you are when you look back at the mountain, at the shadow of the mountain, as one of our guests called it. Geography makes a big difference, right? I mean, this issue in the South is a big deal, but on the East and West Coast and Europe and places, they're like, yeah, there's no God. What's the big deal? So the fact that this is a big deal, letting go of God, is very much a geographical issue as well. And then how lied to you feel. That's one of the things that's been kind of painful for me, was how I gave my life to this, only to find out it was bullshit. And I feel, who did this to me? You know, the people I've loved and trusted told me this. So there can be some anger at first. And again, we're going back to those 5 stages. You know, you get to where you accept.
Yeah. I guess I was I was a shallow one, because to this day I look at people and say, why are you putting yourself through that much pain? And why are you doing that? You know, because afterwards, once a person confronts what they confront.
Ignore me.
Okay, I will. Just like in the show, I guess. Yeah, really. There is a sense of relief and release as well. There's a sense of freedom and awe and wonder, because it really is wonderful when you think about it. You know, when you look at everybody, and the impossibility of us being here is enough wonder for me, and it does give you a sense of agency once you let go.
How many of you, just show of hands, feel a lot of freedom after you left religion? Feels good, right? Feels good. So one of the things that is free, and I use this little meme because it went around this week, and it mostly has to do with, you know, peer-to-peer relationships. And this guru, Yogi Bhajan, said, if you're willing to look at another person's behavior toward you as a reflection of their state of their relationship with themselves, rather than a statement about your value as a person, then you will, over a period of time, cease to react at all. So this is an image of a healthy emotional person that says, yeah, I don't let anybody tell me who I am or define me or validate me. I know I'm comfortable in my own skin. So this is a maturation process. And one of the things that I thought of when I saw this was, once we relate that to God. So if this picture is what it means to be emotionally healthy when it comes to relating to others, imagine the same concept in relation to God. Part of the freedom that people feel when they stop believing in God is that they no longer are vying for His attention and approval. And so part of my atheist experience was I got really comfortable in my own skin, and I stopped apologizing for being human.
Since we're meaning-making, pattern-seeking creatures, we've seemed to see that 9/11 was the big game changer for a lot of people. Not only did nations and you could argue the world change, but there's been some type of tectonic shift going on. Maybe we're just at the beginning of it, but things are starting to change, and 9/11 is, well, that's where the argument goes. That's where it started.
So we do, after all these interviews, we do feel like that there is something shifting. Maybe it's just because we're in the middle of it. But I do think that America is coming through almost a pubescent period of like extreme religiosity. And everybody seems to be, not everybody, but many seem to be backing away from certainty, which we would call humility in today's day. And they have others that are digging in their heels. There's no doubt about that. We see that every day. But for the most part, I think that there's a tectonic shift happening religiously in America. So 3 quick takeaways of our 69 episodes. The power of story. My God, right? I mean, like, we could you're sitting here listening to us talk right now. But if we were sharing our story, that'd be really a lot more interesting than a lecture or something. And so these people get up and share their story, and you learn, you feel human, you feel connection, which is the second thing, the power of community. You know, and I'm completely an advocate of Sunday assemblies and the likes, mostly because I came out of Christianity, and community was something that was a very integral part of my upbringing and life, and I loved it. I loved the community. I didn't love the dogma, but I loved the community. And this is the community without the dogma right here in this room. And so I think most of the people on the show had found some way, and that's what they were looking for, obviously, too, a way to be in community in their area with other atheists and agnostics and humanists. And then thirdly, the power of affirming reality. One of the things I say on the show, I close every show with, or at least I close the opening with, say yes. Be a yes-sayer to what is. And part of what I think the religious delusion does is that you look at something and a cognitive dissonance occurs, and you basically have to delude or self-delude or continue to prop up something that's not factual or evidential. And eventually, what I love about these journeys that we've surveyed is, in every case, they built the courage to say yes to what is. And I remember the first time that I acknowledged there was no Adam and Eve. That was like a cotter pin for a lot of my faith construct. So, all right, so that's our presentation. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
What's the most shocking or interesting thing you've heard from someone that you've interviewed?
Well, maybe because it just happened yesterday when we taped the show. But there was a fella on who was talking about the Toronto blessing.
How many of you know that?
Which I had no clue about.
That was a part of a Christian movement that involved laughing fits, like God would come into a service and fall in the crowd, and they would
people start barking.
Yeah, the barking fit. Wow. And so Bob had never heard any of that.
I mean, it just sounded so odd to me. So the Toronto thing, and there's a couple other things. There's a place that ministers go, charismatic ministers go, where they learn the laying on of hands and the magic words.
How to prophesy.
How to prophesy. And I, because I look at stuff like this baffled, I have to know, how does that work? What's up with that?
Yeah.
And explain
so
that.
This guy had been to one of those and he called it Hogwarts afterwards. So, good question. And, I'd say for myself, the transgender show was crazy for me because this is a plight that is, we are all in some ways growing up in a world that rejects us. But that was just shocking how painful her childhood had been and still is. Yeah.
You had a guest called, his last name was Von Heathen. Is that his real name?
What was that?
One of your guests was Von Heathen. Or
Chris the Seethen Heathen?
I thought you said his name was Von Heathen. That's classic.
That's not his real name, actually.
And we do find people like that are out, but just sort of half out. And for probably good reasons, they may, get fired from their jobs or some terrible thing may happen. So
they're not out with their family.
They're not out yet.
So,
yeah.
So you guys said that some of your guests are like total strangers. Do they just like email you and say, I want to be on the show?
They'll listen to the show, or sometimes it's pretty random. This is the kind of things I used to give credit to God for, because this is a divine thing, this is a God thing. Because they just land on my lap, and we meet, we hook up on Facebook or something.
Right.
And either I'll say, hey, you got an interesting story, will you come on the show? Or they approach me and say, I want to come on the show and share my story.
Yeah. Isn't that
pretty random?
That happens so frequently, just that notion of, I'm thinking about my brother and he calls me, what is it's got to be the finger of God. And it's like, well, if you knew the law of large numbers, maybe not. Maybe there is. That's why they made that word coincidence.
Yeah, one more. Two more.
It sounds like, Bob, like you never were big in the Christian movement, but past you were.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, was there a turning point for you?
When I left religion?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Fucking Titanic. Sorry about that. Bob, that's one of the contrasts here, is Bob was a lifelong atheist, never drank Kool-Aid. I drank it hard and long and deep. And so that's part of the contrast of our angles as we approach the guest, is he has no grid for what we went through as religious people.
I'm stunned all the time.
Yeah.
I just can't, I don't understand this.
And our guests that are post-Christian, I can finish their sentence. It's fair.
Yeah. In fact, he acts as an interpreter. He really does. Like, he'll say something, words like, calling and those kind of words, but there are other words as well. And Cass will say, that means, like I'm from the moon or something.
Yes, ma'am.
What was the most interesting contrast between the Christians who've deconverted and your Muslim guests? And speaking to that, could you help us understand how we can be of assistance when we run into Muslims who are questioning their faith?
Muslims who are questioning their faith?
Yes.
Hina, Data Boy, she spoke at a conference that I saw, approached her after, really, really sharp girl, wore a burqa until she was 13, I think. and she's now atheist and out and talking about it. I asked her if there was a fatwa out on her, and she said, no, I'm not that big a deal. And in the West, the fatwas aren't really that big a deal. But to get back to your question, I don't know what's different between her and the Christian deconversion process. It's been a long time since we did that show.
Yeah, but I recall the fundamentalism is just that, you know. So there's not really a big, with the exception of, you know,
The culture.
the culture and the words and what have you, the message they have, clearly different. But still, it's that there's one way or nothing, you know.
Yeah, so the word fundament literally means bottom or butt or anus, actually, in the dictionary. And so fundament is what you sit on, and it's what you rest, everything rests on that, like the meaning of life. It's what's holding everything together. And when that goes out, it's like somebody pulling a chair out from underneath you. You hit and you bust your tailbone. And so it's no matter what religion it is, no matter what ideology it is, when you finally say yes to that was not true, that's just shocking. That's just horrifying. Many of you understand that. Yes, ma'am.
I kind of have a comment, and I wanted to know if you also have observed this type of thing. As far as the wave of religiosity that has just blanketed us since 9/11, I notice that when huge things happen, and I read a book and came across this, that there was a blanket of religiosity that happened right after the Titanic, too.
Mm-hmm.
When huge things happen,
Yeah.
and so many people expect the population to rely on God for comfort, they shut up about not believing in Him. And so the fringes are louder because everyone else thinks it's rude to tell them they're wrong when people are greeting.
Right. Oh, we get that, right? There's a guy that was on the news recently, and he lost a wife and 2 children in a flood in Texas, and he's gone on the news talking about how he's having dreams about seeing them with Jesus, and Jesus pulled them out of the river.
Yeah.
And man, I would have to be a real jerk to like say, no, it didn't happen. I mean, you know, it's like when they're mourning, you're right. You want to they need that security blanket, whatever.
And it's hard to find the moment where you say,
Too
enough
soon?
is enough,
Yeah, right.
and this is damaging
Right.
to us, to only be in one slope.
Absolutely, and that's an incredibly nuanced thing, right? Because as 9/11, as we were recovering, and you're right about catalytic and big giant events, we know that the Cold War is where we got God on our money and God on our pledge. It's because we had to have a bigger God than the bear over in Russia, you know? And so it became this thing, and you know, after a while, and again back with 9/11, it's been 14 years now, so can we start talking about...
A continuous war after where people were dying and dying and dying and dying. We haven't had anybody, you know, that group is still dying.
Yeah, you want to say to that?
Well, I was, not specifically to that, but I was remembering that we had this Reverend Greta Vosper on. And there's a lot of people that, you know, I'm sure when you're on Facebook or something, somebody dies, a pet dies, or a family member of a friend of yours, and everybody's writing, I'll pray for you, I'll pray for you, I'll send you my prayers and stuff. And I get stumped, I stop and I think, I don't want to lie to this person. What should I say? I'm meditating. What should I do? What should I do? So I asked Greta, and she said, say something like, I'm holding you in my heart.
There you go.
So now I've used that several times.
I'm thinking about you as,
There you go.
the one I use.
Yeah.
And it's all we can do, right? It's all we can do.
Sending good thoughts.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
My goodness, that was fantastic. Thank you. Give him another round of applause.
Okay, this is the time for our customary pause for contemplation, which for our congregation has bounced between a moment of silence and a moment of science. Jamie and I thought we could do both. My bachelor's is in English, Jamie's is in biochemistry. We have different views of the world, and we each have a very different base knowledge. We are frequently finding balance and compromise in our marriage. I would like to share with you a moment of silence. We will be quiet together and reflect on the lessons learned today and how they can be applied to our lives.
Or, if you prefer, a moment of science. Consider that the very atoms that make up your body are traceable to the crucibles that were once the centers of high-mass stars, that exploded their chemically rich guts into the galaxy, enriching pristine gas clouds with the chemistry of life. So we are all connected to each other biologically, to the Earth chemically, and to the rest of the universe atomically. Thanks for playing along. Up next, we've got Trying My Best with our very own Brenda Quinn. During this segment, we ask one of our assemblers to share a story in which they are trying to be the best human that they can be. Please welcome Brenda Quinn.
When I heard that this month's theme was humility, I knew I wanted to do the Trying My Best. Because I have a confession to make. The week I graduated from college, I wrote this in my journal. I am one of the smartest people I know. Now, if that's not a lack of intellectual humility, I don't know what is. But why did I believe that? Well, I believed it because I needed to believe it. And I needed to believe it because I had a complicated childhood. Most of us did, right? And my complicated childhood involved a lot of chaos, a lot of criticism, being a girl instead of a boy. By the way, if you've ever wondered why my name is spelled funny with a Y, it's because I was supposed to be Brian with a Y. I was the third girl. There wasn't going to be a Brian with a Y. This was a story I got told a lot. Think about that, right? I was overweight. I wasn't good enough. And I needed to be good enough. So, some of you, I know, can identify with that. Some of you probably had your own version of not being good enough. The rest of you probably think that that's nuts. And you're right. It is. That is a crazy way to think. But like Cass and Bob pointed out, we look for patterns, we seek to make meaning. And that's what I was doing. So, in any case, that's the way I thought. And because my one strength was smart, it's the only thing I got praised for, really, it's the only thing that got me attention, I decided that smart enough was good enough. And I knew I needed to be smart. I wanted to be over here on the bell curve. So, I went off to MTSU. I found my peeps in the honors program. I was murdering you. Not because of me, that's just cool. And I was the most obscene teacher's pet that you can possibly imagine.
No.
My main psychology professor had to tell me to quit coming to his office every day. It didn't help that I had a crush on him. But by the time I graduated, I was smart enough. Yay! I was one of the smartest people I knew. And then I went to graduate school. And I wasn't the smartest person I knew anymore. In fact, it felt like a struggle even to be in the middle of the pack. It was a huge blow to my self-esteem because it was based on being smart. My self-esteem went up and down. If I did well, if I made a smart comment in class, yay, I'm smart. If I struggled with something, no, I'm not smart. I always thought I loved to learn. Guess what? I didn't love to learn. I love to know. See, learning, you have to go from not knowing, go through a process, and then you know. The state of not knowing and going through that process was frightening because it challenged that story I had of I was good enough because I was smart enough. So, what did I do? I just beat myself up like crazy. Because that makes sense, right? Right? So I'm like, be smarter, study harder, get it quicker. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Be smarter, be smarter, be smarter. That didn't work. What a surprise, right? That didn't work. In fact, it made life really hard. I ended up getting depressed and I went to therapy. And my therapist helped me see that smart was not my only quality. That I should also give myself a little credit for being kind, or being funny, or being creative, or being a crazy cat lady, right? So I could add those things together and move from down here to up here, right? So I have lots of different bell curves. You were right, Jeremy. Right, here's kind, here's smart, here's, right? And I'm going to add them all together. And then I'll be good enough again. But I was still measuring, right? I was still measuring. So when I wasn't kind, I would beat myself up. If I wasn't creative, look what you did. If I wasn't a crazy cat lady, no, wait a minute, that would never happen. There's always a crazy cat lady. So, one time I was saying to my late husband, this friend of yours, you know, he's trying to be the smartest guy in the room. That's why he's being critical and difficult. And my husband said, why would you want to be the smartest person in the room? If you are, then there's nobody to learn from. Mind blown. Right? How could anyone think that way? That's craziness. Because I was still measuring. Even though I was using a lot of different qualities, I was still measuring. And then he died. And when my husband died, very quickly and unexpectedly, 12 weeks after he was diagnosed with cancer, it made me really, really angry. Because I came to realize that along with being smart for self-esteem's sake, being good enough for self-esteem's sake, I also, because of my chaotic childhood, thought that I had made a bargain with the world. I'm going to be good enough and I won't get hurt. And the world did not keep its side of the bargain. I was trying to be good enough and I still got hurt. So I was angry and I was confused. And it sent me back into therapy. By the way, if nothing else, this Trying My Best is going to be an advertisement for therapy. Those of you who know I'm a therapist, I'm not drumming up business, I promise. But it sent me back into therapy. And going back into therapy led me to the concept of self-compassion. And self-compassion has been such a helpful concept for me. Because self-compassion says, self-esteem, trying to be good enough, doesn't work. It doesn't work. What we need is not to feel better, yay, I'm so good. Good enough is crap. What we need is to give ourselves the same love and affection despite our flaws, seeing ourselves in our whole complexity, not as a bell curve, not as even a series of bell curves, but the way we see other people. I've never been bad about seeing other people on a bell curve. It was just me. So I could see them, see their flaws, love them with their flaws. It's all good, right? Giving that same loving attention to myself. And what I found was when I did that, I didn't have as much pain because I wasn't beating myself up. And when you don't have the pain of beating yourself up, you behave better. When you're not in pain, you don't say unkind things. At least not as much. You don't give yourself grief and then turn around and give other people grief. So I think that's what most of the pain we cause each other is about. It's taking our own pain and taking it out on others. So it was easier to behave better when I quit telling myself, stop behaving badly, right? Because of the pain. The other thing that self-compassion helped me with was to understand that I thought I made a bargain with the world, but the world didn't know that. There are no bargains. Bad things are going to happen to me, no matter how good I am. And the same is true for you. Good things are going to happen to me, no matter how bad I am. And the same is true for you. That's the way the world works. There isn't a pattern of, if I behave this way, I will get these things that we try to see, that Cass and Bob talked about. Doesn't exist. It's not the way life works. So, I have the humility now to say that I'm a work in progress. This is what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying my best. I'm trying to live with self-compassion and to see myself the way I see everyone else as hugely complex, not a bell curve. Thank you.
My other function here is to make whoever uses this mic stand next have to fidget. So we're drawing towards the end, and we've got a few announcements to make. Remember to check out our Facebook and Meetup pages. Remember that if you don't feel like announcing your lack of belief, your agnosticism, or whatever to Facebook, you can message the Sunday Assembly Nashville Facebook page and request to be added to the secret group. Only members of the secret group can see who are in it. On November 6th, Brenda will be hosting organizing a women's weekend. Please see the Meetup page or talk to Brenda if you're interested.
Also, November 29th, Kate, right there, Bird Kate, will be hosting a potluck in Franklin. And that's all. That's not required. That's on Meetup, correct? Yes, that's on Meetup. Okay. We're doing this next?
Yep.
Okay. Sunday Assembly's monthly expenses total about $550. It is run by volunteers and donations. You can give in the box. Do we have? Yep, that way. The box is that way. On your way out the door, Tanya can take cards.
Tanya, why don't you stand up?
And we also have a PayPal, and you can give to us by shopping on a certain jungle-themed website that we're not allowed to say the name of. The link to that wonderful website will be on the secret Facebook page, so find it there. Oh, that's easy.
And please join me in saying thank you once again to Bob and Cass. Thank you very much. To Jared. Oh.
Just one more thing that we're doing that got up there kind of late. We are having brunch on the 14th of November. Everybody potluck.
And that's
So
on Meetup?
Berry Hill. It's on Meetup. It's there.
Oh.
There it is. Okay.
There it is.
Okay, there it is.
That's great.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you to Jeremy for running the tech, to the... To the Franco on sound. Don't be shy. To the greeters, to the unnamed assembly band, and to the production committee. Thank you all so much.
If you like what you see here today and you think you can contribute or make things better, talk to one of our committee leaders. We have Patrick, wave, Nancy, with the baby, Melissa, and Matthew, and you can talk to any of them about how you can be more involved.
Don't forget, lunch at Blackstone on West End and 20th. A few closing thoughts. While Bob and Cass were doing the first part of their podcast, I was shocked by the diversity of guests that they had interviewed. They interviewed professionals who have a depth of expertise in areas that I've only maybe heard of once, maybe. Which is a perfect illustration of how little we know. What a slim slice of reality we all really see. So when you're approached by a rabbi, a Christian counter-apologist, or a friend with a different point of view, know that you only have a little piece of the full story in the world. Have a little humility. It's okay to say I don't know. Now the musical stylings of the unnamed assembly band.
In Atlanta at the Atheist Alliance of America Conference, Sunday Assembly Atlanta was gracious enough to invite us down here. Patrick Horst also played bass on that, so we're going to try to tear it up one last time. Everybody, if you don't mind, stand up with me, and again, you feel free to sing, clap, and dance if you like.
Thank you.